The moment many survivors realize they weren't crazy is often the moment their abuser isn't in the room. What follows is clarity, courage, and the slow return to self-trust. And if you've ever lived in confusion or silence, this episode you do not want to miss. Have you ever felt something was wrong but couldn't explain it? Like the person you love was slowly chipping away at your sense of self?
We've been there. Different marriages, but to the same man, with the same toxic pattern. But God was still working.
We're Lizzie and Dina, women of faith, survivors, and truth tellers.
Surviving toxic relationships is for any woman stuck in confusion, healing after betrayal, or searching for her voice again.
You are not crazy.
You are deeply loved. Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of Surviving Toxic Relationships. Today we have a very special guest, and it is Skye Bellarmine. She is an author of the Breaking Solace book trilogy. She survived a near-fatal collision with a wrong-way driver on the interstate, learned how to walk again, and also endured 20 years of narcissistic abuse. Skye escaped from her abuser, and now she's on a mission to share her story to help women recognize and overcome the challenges in their lives, develop a mindset for success, build the architecture to achieve their goals, and learn to live a life of faith, fortitude, and fulfillment. Skye teaches you how to navigate through the obstacles, and she works with you to develop a strategy to reclaim your self-esteem, confidence, energy, and self-worth. She will help you build your tribe and gather the needed expertise to walk the road back to you and heal. Her novel trilogy shares her journey and is definitely a psychological thriller. So Skye, welcome. I can't wait to unpack this with you. Lizzie and I are going to have a lot of questions. Tell us your story. Yeah, tell us your story. Tell us what, inspired these novels, this novel trilogy. Give us that background.
Wow. Okay. So being married to a narcissist for 20 years. And then there was a point after that amount of time where he went out of town for, I guess, about 10 or 11 days or whatever. And I was hanging out with my friends. And suddenly they're going, like the first night, we were just having dinner, pizza, whatever. And they're going, Skye, you're laid back. I mean, even kind of funny. What's going on? And I went, oh my God, he's not here. I'm not walking on eggshells. Mind blown. Okay. And then they all kind of started filling in the pieces. He had been telling people that I was crazy and that, too sensitive, too emotional, not serious about life, not focused. I mean, I'm a personal trainer, but she has no forward mobility. I mean, he was just like, cut me down to all these people that are my friends. And they were, no. But finally, when they saw a different me, they came forward and told me what was going on. And so I started calling my friends I knew had divorces and were successful and attorneys and all that, and found an attorney, filed, and it took 21 months. He fought me the whole way. Yeah, 21.
That's a very typical narcissistic reaction, that's for sure. They're not going to let you get away. And if you do get away, they're going to try to make you pay in every way possible.
Well, yeah. And it was interesting as my attorney said, don't have any financial conversations with him. And I was kind of stuck in the marital house for about 6 months so I could get finances together and find a rental place and all that. And he'd say, hey, let's talk about money. And I said, I can't. Oh, sure you can. I won't tell. I said, no, I can't. My attorney has to be present. And one thing, I was on a podcast, Allegiant Divorce Solutions, and we were talking about how do people that are married to a narcissist, particularly women, figure out the road. And you mentioned my intro, I talk about building your tribe, having a handful of people that you can talk with and work through this process with. But another big piece is have at least some understanding of the finances in your relationship. And so I wasn't overly interested, but I became interested. When he got back, I said, you've been wanting to talk about the budget and the investments. I'm ready. Let's do it. He's like, really? I said, yeah. So we sat down, and I tell people what you need to get is that bottom line. What can be divided? Okay, what can be divided? So got that. information passed me. He said, you don't need to take notes. I said, oh, that's okay. I'll take a few notes. And so I have, in Breaking Solace, I have Tally having that conversation, like finding out what's really going on financially in their marital situation. And so, but in my case, being a personal trainer, not exactly setting the world on fire, monetarily or whatever, but it's a passion, especially after what I went through. Everybody's like, you nearly died and now you're walking and you're water skiing and you're training and what you need to become a trainer. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I took the test and yeah. So in the state we were in during the divorce, you have to, if the person who makes less money has to meet with a vocational advisor to find out what your earning power is, like what you're worth on the job market. And so I get into that meeting, and it was during the pandemic and all that, and it's a Zoom call. And she asked me about like the first entry on my resume, how long was I with that company? And I said, I wasn't ever with that company. And she said, well, it says right here you were. And I said, no, well, tell me other things. He faked my resume. He did. He faked my resume. There were at one point I had worked with a mortgage company called Collateral, and he didn't even know the name of it. It said a mortgage company, and it was the wrong dates. It was the wrong job titles. It was wrong everything. So what I did was I redlined everything on that document. I got a copy of it and sent that to my attorney and said, here's what it should look like. So if we had to go to court, it ended up being mediated, that would have been evidence. Like here, just lying. And then you're thinking, I don't know if you guys thought about this during your divorces, but you're thinking, okay, when all this is done, I'm going to call him out on the resume. No. Once you're done, you're so happy to be done and away from that monster that you don't need to say anything. You just move on with your life. You just get on with life and try to help others get through their situations, just like you ladies are trying to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Lizzie and I have had many people that we've known that have just not moved on and stayed in this toxic cycle of what are they doing and who are they with, and are they asking my kids to come to Thanksgiving at instead of my house, and or they're out they're dating themselves, but they just see a narcissist in every single person in the entire world, and they just don't ever recover from their injuries. They stay in this cycle of being stuck, and then they start getting toxic. They're out of that relationship, so now it's time for them to heal and see those behaviors that have kept them trapped, and instead they just become like
Right.
miserable
Yeah,
and angry and not never forgiving, never letting things go, and just
right.
cycling that drain. And so it's a great point. Yeah,
It all comes around. I mean, yeah, he's been fired numerous times, and yeah, it's like I said, his girlfriend left and all. I mean, I don't even know where he lives now. So yeah, just trying to move on, but it takes, I would say, journaling, writing, doing podcasting, doing something to help get your story out there, and that will be a light into others' lives. And then having the faith that you're going to be okay. I mean, I remember during the divorce, I'd come in from work and I just had what I call my garage meltdowns. I would literally just pull in the rental house garage, close the door, and just sit there and fall apart. And I know we talked about faith, and I would feel like God saying, hey, I haven't brought you this far to leave you now. This is going to work out. You're going to be okay. And I feel sometimes like Back to the Future, like, hello, McFly, are you in there? Like, I feel God going, come on now. You got this. Don't fall apart. You got this. And so I remember waking up. It was the morning of one of the depositions. And I just I had this scripture kind of came to mind about something that it surpasses all understanding, and is peace. And which is kind of interesting that my book Solace is peace. But anyway, and so I walk into the deposition, saw my attorney. I was like, hey. He goes, hey, well, you're in a good mood. What's going on? I said, well, I've decided that this is going to go really well. And when I walk in the room for the deposition, I want my walk-up music to be RESPECT. My attorney goes, you're so crazy. But anyway, in a good way.
that would be hilarious. I would love to see
Yeah.
that.
But it was interesting because during that situation, his attorney asked me a couple, about it, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes worth of questions. And then my attorney got on him for 4 hours. 4 hours of drill. And he just, it and he was just lying. I mean, I would make notes every now and then, say, hey, you need to go further with that question because that's not true. And again, he said, yeah, Skye's not the same anymore. And yeah, she's just too emotional all the time. What do you do with that? A narcissist sees what they want to see. And even lie detector tests, from what I've heard, aren't even used in the courtroom in certain cases if there's like a narcissist involved, because they can believe a lie so deeply that it becomes truth.
Yep, absolutely.
And the
We've experienced
brainwave,
that. Yep.
yeah, the monitor, the lie detector test will not catch it. They can believe something so intensely and deeply it's just an outright lie that it becomes their truth. And so it'll be interesting. We have a graduation of a family member coming up in a couple of weeks, and I haven't seen him in like 3 years, but it'll be a good gathering. I think
So your books, even though they're a novel, they're loosely based on some of your own imagination and experiences.
yeah,
Obviously, any novel we write, we've got to write from some things that are
right,
than our imagination.
right.
So tell me more about those books and like this character. What is she dealing with her, especially in book 1 and 2, book 3? What is she going through? What is she dealing with? What kind of abuse is she dealing with in this relationship?
Physical, sexual, emotional, mental, financial, all of it, So, and there's some cliffhangers like in book 1. There's some in book 2 that I'm answering right now, book 3. But the rages, and if you haven't been raged at by a narcissist, you really can't understand it. It's so sudden, and their eyes turn kind of black, and you don't ever know the reason. Like one night after dinner, I was just putting the taco meat away. That's all I was doing, and it slipped, and I spilt it, and we had friends there. The scenes in book 1, he went into a tyrant rage, like yelling at me at the top of his lungs. It was just some taco meat. It was not a big deal. And then after divorce, a few of the family members had seen him like Christmas or whatever, and somebody spilt the blueberries, and I said, oh, was it like the taco meat? And they said, exactly. He flew off the handle over some. I mean, it's weird what triggers them. Oftentimes, other people don't. Sometimes there'll be an audience, but oftentimes they save it just for you. They want to just rage at you in private. There was one day, I don't know what the topic was, but he was yelling his head off at me. And then he left the room and came back into the kitchen and said, oh, I bought your favorite coffee. Would you like some? And I was like, no, thanks. No. And so I guess the constant rages out of nowhere a lot of times. I'm not perfect. I wasn't the perfect wife. I'm not the perfect person, whatever. But there was just a lot of yelling and screaming. And 2 weeks after I filed, I said, and I was still stuck in the marital house. I said, you haven't yelled at me in 2 whole weeks. And you know what he said? I finally figured out that yelling at you wasn't the way to handle you. Yeah.
Okay, after that many years, he finally figured that out.
Yeah.
My
It took
goodness.
a couple of decades. But in the book, Tally and Blake meet in college at UCSD, and he's already getting kind of controlling. He has some controlling parental figures and all that in his life. And he doesn't want her to follow her dreams. And everything needs to be about him, helping him finish applying for jobs or setting up his apartment or whatever. And she has a life. I mean, yeah, they're dating or whatever at that point, but then they end up getting married. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. The rages out of nowhere, the gaslighting. He's always cutting her down. But then when they have a problem, you're supposed to stand there and listen and be supportive and all that. Stood in that doorway and listened to what a hard day at work it had been. And he was the smartest person in the whole company. Nobody understood him because he always had the right answer and they just didn't see his ways. So I had Blake doing that same kind of thing with Tally. And she's doing well. She's working hard as an interior designer, but he's never encouraging of her. Like anything she does is wrong. And that's the way they make you start to doubt your self-esteem, your confidence, your worth, your value, your decisions. I mean, the gaslighting gets so bad that sometimes you don't even know, you don't have a recall. You don't remember that conversation directly. And so it was just been interesting. I've been studying Carl Jung a bit, that the psychotherapist that back in the early 1900s. And some of his theories, and he talks about some patients, and he was talking about a female that actually started documenting all the conversations that she would have with her husband, either write them down or record them, because he'd say, no, it didn't go that way. And so but the more she tried to prove that it did, the more he would rage at her. Like the worse it would get, because they will never believe that they're not right.
That's because they're not trying to resolve the relationship. They're not trying to resolve the problem. They're not trying to get closer to you or take care of your heart or your emotions. That's not what they're in it for. So for them to do that now means that there has to be connection and accountability, and that they are now responsible to care for you. That's not what they're there for. They're there to take whatever they can from you without you realizing it, without you catching on, and to completely suck you dry.
Right. And you're their supply. So it's like the happy, sad buttons. Like, how can I make Skye happy? How can I make her sad? They get a jolt from whatever emotion you have going on. And if you're happy, then we got to make her sad. We can't.
Or if you're sad because of something they did, then they can turn around and they get to be the one that builds you up. Even that is control and manipulation. When they bring you flowers because they were harsh with you yesterday, or they do something kind, or they take you to your favorite restaurant because, okay, I'm doing this for you because I've been neglectful. And then so they can pull you around like a puppet. Pull those strings anytime they want and get the emotion and the reaction that they decide they want. And it's so funny because normal, quote unquote, people don't play games like that. We just don't see it. We don't ever see it as a big game because we don't think that way. And so we think that they think like us. And so we're always trying to figure out from our own normal head vantage point. And that's where it just gets so confusing. You end up just feeling like I must be this certain person, even though you've never been told you're that person in any other relationship in your life. But all of a sudden you're being told that this is who you are and here are your issues and your problems. But you're lucky that I'm staying with you because I'm a loving guy and I'm putting up with all this, and you should feel glad. My ex used to say, nobody will ever love you like I do. Nobody will ever love you like I do. And it was because whenever the fall happened, whenever I'd catch him in another affair, all the love bombing would get so crazy and intense. And finally, after probably a decade, I got this epiphany. If this is love, I don't want it. This is love. You know what I mean? Like you
want out. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, every decision you make is for you. I might be in there somewhere, maybe second, you know what I mean? But for the most part, every decision is for you. Everything you do is for you. Every woman you're flirting with is for your own little conquest, and all the gross things you do that harm our relationship are for you. And then this is love, and nobody's going to love you like this. It's amazing how we are in the fog.
When you're in it though, and it's like if it's your first marriage or whatever, did you ever wonder, is this normal? Is this what everybody else is going to? Because I remember talking to my friends on the phone, and they were newly married or whatever. I said, oh, my husband's about to go to bed. I'm going to go on upstairs. And I was sitting there going, why? I kept pondering on that and thinking, why do you want to be with them like so often? And then the pandemic happens and he was working from home. Oh my God. I learned so much during that time.
Probably a lot of divorce.
One day he was having,
he
was having a conversation. I had a client. It was like a Saturday, but I didn't have to leave yet. And I was already living in the basement at that point before I moved out. And he was having this conversation, and it was talking about Skye's self-esteem is so low. I think that's why she's divorcing me. And at that point, I just walked in the room and I said, my self-esteem is not low. And secondly, that's not why I'm divorcing you. And he said, you're supposed to be at work. I said, nuh-uh, not for another hour. And he said, well, obviously this conversation was not meant for your ears. And I said, no, it didn't sound like it was. I mean,
the way they like to twist their stories to everybody else of who you really are and all the insecurities. She's just really emotional. Yeah. And weaving it around everybody else. And then everybody kind of looks at you with a different lens. And you're like,
yeah.
This is like the Wizard of Oz.
I've run into so many neighbors, like Trader Joe's or wherever, and they would tell me stories of things he said after I moved out. And it was just crazy stuff. And then they always say, we just didn't realize. Or some of them would say, my orthopedic surgeon that did a lot of my surgeries after the car wreck, I was talking to him one day And he said, why didn't you call me just to really talk through this? And I can help you. And I said, well, I didn't want to bother you. You're busy and all that. And he said, well, we always knew he was controlling, but we just thought you were handling it. And I thought, and that's what a number of people have said. You know, they saw some signs. And I will tell you this, we talk about visibility, but you see like narcissists and everybody, the radar is way up and you become like hyper vigilant. Anybody that seems controlling you at all. After the divorce, there was this financial advisor that was recommended to me, and she and I met a couple of times. But every time I saw her on caller ID, I dreaded the conversation. So I thought, I don't have to live that way anymore. If I dread somebody, just I'll block them, you know, like whatever. And I found another advisor, and he's really good. So, I mean, you get to a point in your life where you can make that choice, and you don't have somebody trying to make that choice for you. So. But so Skye and Blake, yeah, she's in counseling. She's an awesome counselor, Shannon. Who's helping her work through this. She goes through that. Well, maybe it's my fault. And Shannon's like, no, this is narcissism. There's no cure. And that's when Tally kind of falls apart at that point. It's like, there's no cure? No, there's not. They can't change. There's no cure. They're missing some empathetic neurons and all that never formed in their brains. And so you come all the way through and she gets ready for the divorce. And then in the escaping, she actually carries it out. And she has a great attorney. My attorney is the model for that. Yeah, my ex tried to get his attorney fired for losing the divorce. She has a restraining order against him.
Wow, that takes a pair to go after your attorney who is very well versed in the law and has a lot of friends in high places. And that's some arrogance too. Goodness gracious. Yeah. Well, so tell us.
I was going to say, my attorney said that my ex was the worst narcissist he'd ever seen.
Really?
And he used to be a criminal attorney before he was family law.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had a really good attorney, though. I mean, sometimes even attorneys have a hard time dealing with these cases and knowing how to handle these narcissists. Yeah.
Well, he handled it, but he raged at his attorney so much. My attorney would she would talk with my attorney and go, because they, all attorneys are friends or whatever. Yeah. It's a battle in the courtroom, but then and so, but it was a circus. It was just a circus.
And it's amazing how they'll end up firing their lawyers too, over and over. Some of them will go through the whole lawyer system. I've seen that a couple of times, just so that they can keep making everybody else miserable or something. Mm-hmm. I guess I had heard that one of my ex-boyfriends, through his ex-wife, that he had fired his lawyer because he didn't like how it was going, and he felt like he could do a better job in the divorce.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard some stories like that with narcissists who think, because they always think they're the smartest, that they know everything, that everybody should go to them for every answer known to, the human world. I don't know.
Yeah. And I know in your case, you said your court case was drug out for 21 months. A lot of these guys will also, and girls, narcissists can be either, obviously, but they will use the court system to legally abuse you, especially if they happen to have money. They can just keep on taking you to court and suing you for this and suing you for that and demanding this or that. And you end up in these long, drawn out cases just because they will not ever let you have any peace. Whether you're with them or not, you are going to suffer. And that's kind of like, that's where Lizzie and I are always advocating for gray rock, no communication.
I was going to mention gray rock because I had to learn, especially stuck in the marital house for like 6 months, I had to learn how to talk without saying anything, if you know what I mean. There's nothing that he could use against me. And that's quite a skill. I mean, you get it, you learn it, but because I had, in the movie Gaslight, 1944, that's where all that whole terminology started. And, I still remember the scene where Ingrid Bergman was all dressed up and she was going to go for a walk. And her husband at the time already had all the staff and everybody to doubt her sanity, to doubt her, self-esteem, all that. And she was about to go for a walk, and the house master came up to her and she said, "Oh, my dear, where are you going?" And she said, "He's going to go for a walk." And the lady said, "Oh, no, ma'am, you might get lost." And Ingrid Bergman said, "Yeah, you're right." and just turned around and went back inside. And you get to that point. You get to that point. And it's just interesting being around people now who knew me during that time. Where my college roommate is like, oh my God, my sister's like, oh my God, I got my sister back. And my college roommate is like, oh my God, you're back. like the real Skye is back. Not that mousy person that he was making me become, like doubting myself and everything. So you can come back. And that's a main message. And I know you share that message as well. You can come back and be new and improved. You can get back to being yourself, and you can even be a better version because of what you've been through.
That's a very good point. Exactly. And I know we're going to have to wrap it up here in a few minutes, but tell our audience, like, what gave you the courage to finally leave? Because you were in that relationship for 20 years.
Yeah.
I know I was 27. Izzy combined with her first and second were 21. Yeah. So, I mean, all of us have, double digit decades of these relationships and these situations because, especially if you add children to the mix and you add you're a person of faith and you're a person that is a pleaser and always wants to do the right thing and is terrified of being mean or whatever. You're terrified of being single or you don't have the money to be single. All the reasons, right? And including trauma bonding and everything else. I know this might be part of your novel as well, but how did your character or you, either one, get the courage to leave? What happened? What were those steps? What did they look like?
Okay. So, my ex drove my brother out of my life, and then my brother died of cancer year before last. I did get to see him again after the divorce. He told me all the threats and everything that my ex had done to him. So I was at his celebration of life down in the Panhandle of Florida. And after that, I just stayed there for a week to work on book one. I was working on the Breaking Solace. And my editor called me and said, hey, I know you're grieving, but you're working on the book this week. What is Tally's final straw? I said, Skye, I know what your final straw was and why you left. What is her final straw? I thought, that's a good question. So there was one day I was sitting there on the terrace looking out over the Gulf, and I started writing. And by sunset, 1,152 words later was the final chapter of Breaking Solace, and it was her last straw. And he went out of town and lied about it. And Blake went out of town and tried to sabotage her clients, her interior design clients. He nosed around in her studio in their townhouse, and she noticed her files were a little bit out of order, but she wasn't really sure why. Oh, you're hearing my dogs in the background. They're playing. And so then she started checking, she and her staff started checking in with their clients, and he had been contacting them, trying to sabotage her professionally. And then he went to New York City to visit her friend Bentley, her best bud, and started trying to sabotage her with him. But he didn't tell her. He said he was going on a business trip and be gone for a few days. Well, she said she called his office, and no, he wasn't on a business trip. So it was just the epitome of the lies and sabotage, or trying to sabotage her, not only with friends and family, but professionally. That was her last straw.
And was that yours?
Mine was the fact that when he had gone out of town and I was hanging out with all my friends and family, and they're noticing a difference in me, and then they started telling me all of it. He convinced people, our family and friends, that I was brain damaged from that car wreck, and that I really wasn't making sense, and just a bunch of pack of lies. And my friends were going, no. And then he would tell other family members, and then they'd question each other. Well, why do you say that? She doesn't. I mean, she teaches, she writes, she's a trainer, she's motivational speaker, all that. She doesn't seem to have like brain damage. And every one of them came back and said, because he said so.
Wow.
So you know how persuasive a narcissist can be,
Well, because they act like they're saying it out of concern and love for you. I'm so worried or whatever. And so there's just as an outsider, you think that they love that person. And so you believe them when they act like they care and they're so concerned, but it's just a big act. And good grief, I'm so glad you got out, because I don't know what he would have tried to do with that information, saying that your brain was damaged in the accident. And by the way, I don't think we covered this in our story today, but Skye was in an accident where she even had to relearn to walk. She was down for 6 years and had to be taken care of by him. So for him to now go around telling people that you have this permanent brain damage is kind of scary, because that alludes to a lot of scary things with him trying to take away your independence or convince. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And just, and just always discounting anything I did and trying to convince me that I'm not worth anything. It was crazy times. So that's why I just had to write about it. I had to get the story out. And I tell you, that's very cathartic. Even though I wrote it with fictional characters, but all the scenes. And another thing I will bring up is the 20 reasons why. Okay, so say you're in a relationship or you're married to a narcissist, you're trying to get out. You need to sit down. And this is something I put on my website. It's a program. You need to sit down and write your 20 reasons why you're leaving. And it took me about 15 minutes. And then you need to keep that handy, send it to your attorney every now and then, because they'll make you doubt. They'll make you doubt that you're doing the right thing. Like he let the petition sit on his desk upside down for a month. And that was when it was supposed to be like, he's supposed to be out of there by that time. So then he's walking out of the kitchen with a file. And I said, where are you going? Going to my attorney. You still sure about this? I said, yeah, I'm still sure. And so they want to make you doubt your decision. Like you talk about the love bombing and the flowers and all that. Even when I was stuck in the marital house, he still put my favorite flowers in the kitchen, like every week. Just.
Oh yeah. Gosh, I cannot tell you. I even have a good friend that's like leaving, not a husband, but just a boyfriend. But they've kind of made a little family together in the past few years. And I mean, as soon as she decides, this guy is awful, he's awful. And she's realizing it, getting that epiphany. Man, he just turns on the charm, the guilt, the every emotion possible. Like you didn't even give me a chance to get better. You didn't even give me a chance. Like, how did I even know or understand that I shouldn't do these things, or that these were bothering you? Obvious things like cheating and being abusive, physically abusive, and you're like, yeah, I didn't get a chance to even make this better. I would have made this better. It's not what you think, and you're blowing it out of proportion. All the things, and so you leave that relationship, and she leaves and separates. But the further away she is, the more she kind of forgets all the intense pain and emotion, and the more he's love bombing and pleading and, you can help me. We can do this together. Yeah. So it's just, you're right. Writing those things down and just keep referring to it, because it is the truth, and it will never get better. And you just kind of have to know that.
You have to remind yourself, you put down the 20 reasons why and keep it handy, because you're going to refer to that a number of times during the divorce process.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect, Skye. Well, as a quick 1 minute left, tell us the success of your books. You told Lizzie and I, but I'd love for you to tell our audience like how your book went crazy and hit #1 in like a few hours. So tell us really quick about that, and we'll end there.
Breaking Solace and Escaping Solace, on their launch days in 24 and 25, both went #1 international bestsellers on their launch days, went into 4 nations, 46 self-help categories. Now, this is a fictional psychological thriller novel, 46 self-help categories with psychologists and counselors who deal with toxic and narcissistic relationships. And I'm working on book 3. It'll be out in 2026, and there's going to be a screenplay. So they're writing the script right now. So
look at that! Her books are going to be a screenplay. Oh my gosh, it's amazing!
Yep,
that's fantastic. So fantastic.
Like you just stay faith-based and focused, and and you're going to get the freedom. Yeah.
Absolutely. Love that. Love the fact that all this happened to you and you were able to, it turned around for your good and for everybody's good, really, because now they get to hear your story and they identify and they'll understand. And then it's probably going to end up being a movie after the screenplay. So we'll look forward to that.
Yeah. It's exciting times.
It is.
It is.
Lots
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
That
you.
goes to show
Well, I
everything gives
applaud,
you.
like I said, I applaud what you ladies are doing. This is
Well, thank
amazing that
you.
you have this forum in this format. Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And we love meeting beautiful people like you.
Thank you.
There's something wonderful when you see people who have gone through the fire and then come out just rising above it and being used somewhere, somehow,
Yeah.
to tell their
Yeah.
story and to help others.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Skye. It's been a delight. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.
This has been so fun. Yeah.
Thanks. Skye, thank you for your courage and for putting language to what so many people live in silence. If you recognize yourself in this episode, please hear us clearly. You're not crazy, you're not too sensitive, and you're not alone. If this conversation helped you, consider sharing it with someone who needs support and leaving a review. It helps more survivors find this space, whether on all the podcast platforms or on YouTube. And if you're in the middle of leaving or finding your footing, remember this practical wisdom. Write your 20 reasons why and keep them close for those hard days. Thank you for being here with us today, and we'll see you next time on Surviving Toxic Relationships.